Hello! Welcome to the first post-inauguration edition of Some More News. I need to be blunt with you all right now, alright? No bull. We're starting the Biden administration with some hard truths. I had this whole episode planned about Donald Trump pardoning Joe Exotic, how Carol Baskin fed her husband to some ravenous tigers, the insidious ways in which this led Taco Bell to take the 7-layer burrito off its menu, and how Ghislaine Maxwell has the proof of this international conspiracy. But of course, Donald Trump ignored the cries of millions of Americans from 9 months ago and refused to give Joe Exotic the justice he deserved. So I had to scrap the whole dang episode and start over. Honestly, I was stumped about what to talk about this week, since social media has ruined my ability to think about anything that isn't directly in my face at this very minute. Camera! But yeah, if Van Jones isn't crying about it on CNN, it means literally nothing to me. Fortunately, my writers and producers have been keeping notes in this book called Every Horrible Thing in the World. It's sort of like the Bible, but about true things that actually happened, instead of cheerful anecdotes about how you'll get struck by lightning if you perform oral sex. Anyway, I flipped through the book for a few hours after testing out the oral sex thing, and realized that yes, things are bad out there. For instance, did you know that Rand Paul is still allowed on television?
Paul, let me begin with a threshold question for you. This election was not stolen. Do you accept that fact?
Well, what I would say is that the debate over whether or not there was fraud should occur. We never had any presentation in court where we actually looked at the evidence. Most of the cases were thrown out for lack of standing, which is a procedural way of not actually hearing the question. There were several states in which the law was changed by the Secretary of State and not the state legislature. To me, those are clearly unconstitutional, and I think there's still a chance that those actually do finally work their way up to the Supreme Court. Courts traditionally and historically don't like to hear election questions. But yes, were there people who voted twice? Were there dead people who voted? Were there illegal aliens who voted? Yes, and we should get to the bottom of it.
Rand Paul, a man so desperate to get Donald Trump's sloppy seconds after he had his way with the Republican Party, has hitched his wagon to propagating the unfounded conspiracy theory that the 2020 presidential election was a total fraud, fixed, rigged, stolen! Okay, this isn't as exciting as, say, Carol Baskin getting the 7-layer taken off the Taco Bell menu, but whatever, it's still not good. See, Rand Paul can't run a go-nowhere presidential campaign on the Donald Trump fraud story alone. He also has to be at least a wee bit racist to really get that sweet fascist mojo going.
But also, with a mandatory minimum wage of $15, even the government says that nearly 4 million people will lose their jobs. And the people who lose their jobs first when you hike up the minimum wage are black teenagers. So, why does Joe Biden hate black teenagers should be the question. Why does Joe Biden want to destroy all of these jobs?
Yes! Why does Joe Biden hate black teenagers? Why does Joe Biden sit on his porch all day, sipping warm beer and muttering racial slurs? More importantly, why did he decide to risk his life for that Southeast Asian kid who tried to steal his car? I'm sorry, I have this habit of mixing up Joe Biden and Clint Eastwood and Gran Torino, also mixing up the Southeast Asian kid trying to steal a car with police trying to take your car thanks to civil asset forfeiture, a practice popularized in America by Joe Biden. But anyway, you see the resemblance, right? The wispy gray hairs? The erotic magnetism? The 1,000-yard stare that says, "How did I get here? And where is the bathroom?" Rand Paul must have that same problem if he thinks Joe Biden hates black teenagers. I mean, sure, maybe, but if so, it has nothing to do with raising the minimum wage. That is such a disingenuous, inflammatory statement that has no basis in reality, which seems to be the entirety of the Republican platform these days. Their whole thing is pulling an I know you are, but what am I? To every Democratic criticism imaginable. Liberals say Republicans are a group of craven, spineless wieners beholden to an authoritarian cartoon. So in turn, Republicans label Democrats as the actual authoritarian. And sure, Democrats are indeed spineless wieners, but they're beholden to their donors, not Donald Trump. Huzzah! You say conservatives are racist, they come back with, no, actually, you, in fact, are the racist, good sir. And not because of the bipartisan war on drugs or anything like that, but because paying people more money for their work is racist. When this is the level of discourse in America, words mean nothing. They're just words and slaums splibbling from our mouths. Republicans think that they can just confuse voters so much that their heads explode, like Captain Kirk giving Mark Zuckerberg a logic problem. Now, before we get into this minimum wage discussion, I would like to point out that we're filming this on the day of the whole GameStop hedge fund stock debacle. So while we won't be getting into that right now, it's helpful moving forward to know that money is fake. We made it up. It's all bullshit. We could give more of it to people to live. So far, billionaires made $3.9 trillion during the pandemic. Globally, workers lost $3.7 trillion during the pandemic. Complete nonsense. Anyway, let's talk about what raising the minimum wage to 15 measly fucking dollars actually means. But before we do that, let's talk about what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you hate black teenagers. In 2019, 3/5 of all jobs paying at or below federal minimum wage in America were in a sector called leisure and hospitality, which is a bureaucratic way of describing making food and drinks for a living. Back in 2013, the average age of a fast food worker was 29. At that time, 40% of fast food workers were over the age of 25. In 2020, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that only 16.6% of fast food workers were black. To the surprise of all racists, 72% of fast food workers were white. And 100% of them are upset that Taco Bell got rid of the 7-layer burrito. But let's not get sidetracked here. Rand Paul's idea that black teenagers will be laid off in droves by a federally mandated living wage is a scare tactic that doesn't even take into account why a teenager, of all people, would desperately need to work in food service. When I was a young Cody, I got a job bussing tables to develop good habits and learn the value of an honest job. Also to save up to buy a Sega Saturn, which, by the way, didn't even have any good games. I should have gotten a PlayStation at GameStop, like all of my other friends, but you don't see me crying about it, do you? Or dwelling on it decades later? Do you? Put another way, I had a job as a teenager to buy crap I didn't need. Sure, I was excited to play a game called Corpse Killer Graveyard Edition, but I didn't need to play Corpse Killer Graveyard Edition.
And we can't win with air power alone. In any future conflict, we've got to have a large force of ground troops, American boys, in harm's way, to gain control of that region. And Congress won't let us do that. That's why America is the laughingstock of the world.
Yes, I beat that game in 3 days, and I didn't enjoy it one bit. But that's what getting a job as a teenager should be all about. Buying video games, not earning money to pay the rent. The implication of Rand Paul's statement flirts with the notion that black teenagers are supporting their families with minimum wage jobs, also known as page 79 of the book Every Horrible Thing in the World, which is available for pre-order at Barnes & Noble if those even still exist, featuring an introduction by Henry Kissinger, who is somehow still alive. In the warped calculus of American capitalism, it's better for people to work multiple jobs, starve, live out of their car, or, best case scenario, cram 5 people into a 1-bedroom apartment, than run the risk of maybe, possibly, having a corporation shed 4 million jobs they'd probably cut anyway to maximize profits. Republicans scare you with the worst possible outcome, then go back to cutting taxes on the sale of the $750,000 watch that reminds you to be horny. I don't need that reminder, thank you very much. Why do corporations get away with posting record profits while claiming they can't afford to pay people what they need to live with something resembling dignity? Why do corporations like McDonald's claim that $15 an hour would make them raise their prices when a place with similar prices is able to pay $15 an hour? To understand all of this, we have to go all the way back to the creation of the federal minimum wage in 1938. Ooh. The Great Depression pushed America the closest it ever got to true democratic socialism. Thanks to the concerted efforts of an energized workers' movement goading the Democratic Party into action, the FDR administration passed a series of government-funded programs designed to rescue the economy called the New Deal. The New Deal is one of those things your grandparents reminisce about, but don't actually understand, like milk deliveries, the stick shift, or swing music. The New Deal era created all kinds of great things we take for granted now, like Social Security and the federal minimum wage. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 set a minimum wage of 25 cents. It also mandated that any work over 40 hours was considered overtime. It also got rid of child labor, which means if a 9-year-old is making your sneakers, it isn't in the good old US of A, pal. Or it's your child making sneakers for you specifically for some reason. The minimum wage crept up throughout the remainder of the 20th century, accounting for inflation and the rising cost of living in America. From 1961 to 1981, it increased almost every year. So what changed in 1981? Ronald Reagan, of course, the putrid saint of the conservative movement himself, successfully turned the idea of paying people a fair wage into a culture war wedge issue instead of a duty of the republic. The minimum wage stagnated at $3.35 an hour for his entire presidency. I mean, why raise the minimum wage when everyone has MTV? Cocaine is free, and there's a Datsun in every driveway. Besides, Ronald Reagan was a real leader, concerned about big issues of the day.
I said that we needed a rebirth of an American tradition of leadership of that kind, because the United States of America is unique in world history. It has a genius for leaders at many leaders on many levels.
Ah, yes! We have all the leaders, don't we, folks? You could say America leads the world in leaders, the most leaders per capita on the planet. What does this totally epic leader have planned for the nation this time?
And I know we all know that there is one simple measure that will save thousands of young lives that are in the drinking age, if we raise the drinking age, I should say, to 21.
Hold the phone, Chief! I'm pretty sure that after wiping the leaking brain matter from his nose, Mr. Small Government told my 16-year-old son Nestor and millions of children just like him that he can't get drunk if he so chooses? How else is Nestor going to unwind after a hard day's work rinsing the goo off of tables of Panera Bread? Shame on you, Mr. Reagan! The 80s were the true flowering of the Republican mandate to ignore the malfeasance of big business while simultaneously conjuring up panic about the downfall of society. This was the era of dare and just say no, distracting us from deregulation and vulture capitalism. While Ronald Reagan was raising the drinking age and not raising the minimum wage, he was also pushing a variety of tax reform bills that gutted the national government's revenue and in large part led to the 1990 recession. Conservatives might wag their finger at this idea and say that the reason for that recession was because George H.W. Bush raised the minimum wage by 45 cents in April of 1990. That would mean the entire economy cratered in 3 months because of 45 cents an hour. If that's true, which it isn't, but if it is, maybe that's a problem, huh? If that's true, which it isn't, maybe we have a truly f***ed up, precarious system in place, huh? Since 1990, the minimum wage has been raised 7 times. 7 times in 30 years. It hasn't been raised since 2009. All because Republicans are so good at frightening people, and specifically white people. The electorate that Rand Paul craves so much, the one that continues to power the GOP's blight on this world, is predominantly white and terrified at the upward mobility of minorities. This is despite the fact that the vast majority of American workers who earn at or below minimum wage are white. Aw, heck! Rand Paul knows what he's doing when he starts talking about black teenagers, like he somehow cares about them. He knows unemployed young black teenager is code for criminal in this country. He knows that besides racism, the other guiding principle of the United States is selfishness. The same selfishness that makes people flaunt COVID mask regulations in the name of personal freedom. Our collective terror at the thought that someone could possibly get something we didn't is why there's opposition to wiping out student loan debt. It's why the average person has to subsidize miserly corporations through food stamps and unemployment insurance, while they callously lay off employees and duck their own tax responsibilities. There's a Lyndon Johnson quote that's so popular and so prescient that Snopes had to assure people that it's actually real. He said, quote, "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you."
Yeah, that'll show those poor.
Why are you cheering, Fry? You're not rich.
True, but someday I might be rich, and then people like me better watch their step.
Every day, Republican bottom feeders like Rand Paul aim to convince Americans to vote against their best interests by peddling lies and dog whistle racism. This country's economic system is in shambles. Millions of people live on the streets. The Republican Party has no answer for that because they don't care. And corporations are more than happy to profit from that callousness. In 2013, McDonald's created an information website with Visa, imploring their workers living at the poverty line to get a second job and shut off their heat. There's literally a CNBC video on this very platform titled, "Here are both sides of the $15 minimum wage debate."
Opponents point to a Congressional Budget Office report that found raising the minimum wage to $15 would give some 17 million Americans a raise, but result in as many as 1.3 million job losses potentially. Low-skilled workers, teenagers could be the hardest hit. Companies could be motivated to raise prices, cut hours, and potentially automate.
Always two sides, huh? On one side, there's people who want to help each other. On the other side are Republicans. Now that we've all collectively decided to punt the whole punishing politicians for inciting an insurrection issue, we have to get back to the business of raising the Titanic that is this fucking country. But that isn't gonna get Rand Paul elected president, because the most selfish people in a nation of psychic vampires are politicians.
So you quit getting screwed up the butt every time one of them highfalutin politicians up there fuck up the budget or spend money wrong so they can raise taxes to keep taking care of you. I'm broke as shit, and I don't mind saying it.
And not just Republican politicians, because on the non-Republican side, you have a party seemingly terrified of wielding actual power, or swinging for the fences to help people, or communicating to people why something is actually good. For example, we needed a $15 minimum wage more than a decade ago for it to be a living wage. So, given everything else we've said here today, proposing to raise it to $15 over the next 5 years seems insufficient. Speaking of messaging, if you're worried about businesses having to pay people more, maybe it's good to support single-payer healthcare so employers don't have to provide healthcare to their workers, and then healthcare isn't tied to employment, so an unemployment crisis and public health crisis won't feed into each other. But at least they're doing something, yeah? They're not the bad guys. They're just not your friends. They're the good bad guys. Every little bit helps, after all. A phrase used to make it seem like even better things are unattainable, and the crumbs you're getting are good enough. But anyway, this isn't about how Democrats are dog shit, because hey, raising the minimum wage is good. And there's only one party that doesn't want to do that even a little bit. After all, this video is actually about Donald Trump not pardoning Joe Exotic. You know, one last gut punch out the door from the old orange man. What a terrible world we live in, where justice remains so elusive. Joe Exotic brought so much joy to our lives in our darkest moment. What with that hilarious throuple wedding and those silly clothes. Oh, and the catchphrases, such wonderful catchphrases like, "Hi, I'm the king of the tiger men. I like to have kinky sex," and "Kiss my grits." Yes, I'm just reading lines from the original script for this episode because it needs to be said. Small business owners like Tiger Man Exotic are the lifeblood of this nation. Free the Tiger Man from his cage. The irony of the Tiger Man being the one who lives in the cage now. Such bitter irony. Are you running the credits over this? What the actual I'm finally truly passionate about a thing, and this is what you do. 100 episodes, and now I've got a mutiny on my hands. The plight of the small business owner continues. You are all fired. All of you people who aren't actually in the room. I can almost promise you, some of you will be urinated on by someone. I'm not gonna do it because, Hey everybody, thanks for watching this YouTube video. Make sure to like on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel and comment on YouTube. Also, money is fake! Speaking of money is fake, if you'd like to support us, go to our patreon.com/somemore-news. And we've got a TeePublic, or T-Fury, or one of the t-shirt places, you know. Link in the description. Podcast, even more news. Like and subscribe. Tigers.